This podcast was recorded in front of live studio cats.
Hello and welcome to Against the Algorithm. My name is Malik Gale. Thank you so much for taking the time today to sit down and talk with me as I talk to other cool creatives about their journey, how they got to where they are, their hopes, their dreams, all that cool stuff. If I sound a little bit different this week, it's because as I'm editing this, the XLR mic on my mic just decided to die. So we're going to kind of go old school. We're going to go a little bit more punkier with this one. So I'm going to keep it short too, because I can't have you hearing this and thinking this is the standard of the show. A cool opportunity with this podcast is that being able not just to talk to people that I appreciate and love in their work and have been a huge fan of for a while, but also gives me the opportunity to make new friends and talk to cool people and learn their journeys and tell their stories. And this is one of those opportunities. This week on the podcast, we have Josh Garcia, who has done front of house stuff for Little Shop of Horrors. He also has done stuff for Aladdin. And so it's been an amazing opportunity just to sit down and talk with him about his journey there. But besides his day job, he also is an avid collector of just posters for theater, the theater world. And so we sat down and talked a little bit about that. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our mutual friend Emily for even suggesting that he would be a great guest to have on the show and helping set this whole thing up. So one, thanks to Emily. Two, thanks so much to Josh for being just an awesome sport and also being just so nice to talk to. This was a really cool one. I had a great time listening back to it while I was editing. I hope you enjoy it too. But with all that being said, I'm going to catch you back on the flip side with, the house cleaning stuff. But sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Josh Garcia. Right now I have in front of me, a wide assortment of amazing posters, which we will get to and we'll talk to a little bit later. Josh Garcia, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Not too bad. When we first started talking about being on the show, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but you currently work with the current production of Little Shop of Horrors.
Yes.
And you talked a little bit about just having over a decade of going to shows, a decade of doing front of house work. You were like, hey, I have a lot of experience. I'm ready to talk. I can't wait to do my tell-all memoir down the road. And so I feel like with that energy, the only right question for me to ask would be, what would your tell-all memoir be titled?
It would probably be it's funny because I've always joked about it with a few people, but it would probably be something like, please, watch your step, or something like, or no photos, please. Something that would be very ushery, front of house language, something that a line or a phrase that people that worked with me or work in the same industry would be like,
You're
very funny.
You're like, I see what you did there.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Every time I feel like I think it's going to be a chunk or a certain part of my life, I'm like, yeah, that's what it's going to be called. But it's still, it evolves. And I feel like I'm really bad at titles. So we'll see if first I'll get the thing written and then I'll worry about getting a nice title about it, or maybe I'll get some help with that.
Absolutely. And I feel so funny to start this off by talking about a down the road memoir, but what age do you feel like you're like, okay, I am comfortable, seriously, legitimately actually writing this thing?
I mean, I feel like I could have written it in pandemic, which is where I actually probably should have gotten it started, mostly because I feel like my career, my front of house career, up until that point, I was kind of its own little novella in itself, of just the combination of just stories I had from working the shows, and then just my own sort of handbook suggestions of things that I would do, stuff that I actually utilize, nowadays in my everyday going to work front house job.
Absolutely. And so we talked a little bit about it here, and sorry if my hands are ashy. I keep waving it around and I'm already just like, that's going to annoy me. But you talked about a little bit about your career working in front of house, from Aladdin to Little Shop of Horrors, just being involved in theater. I feel like the first question want to ask, kind of like digging a little bit deeper into that, is everyone who loves theater has that show that was the thing that like lit a spark in them to say, okay, this isn't just a hobby, this can be a career. I want to do it. What was that show for you?
It definitely would have to either be, because I feel like they're so connected in my mind, is either Rent or Wicked, mostly because I've a big Adina stan, if you couldn't tell.
Yeah,
If it was an audience, I don't like her at all, not a single bit.
yeah.
Um,
Who her? I'm not a fan.
yeah, I know what a niche, unpopular choice. Um, No, I think how it worked was is that Wicked was coming on tour through. I lived in Colorado at the time, through Denver, and she had always been like, when you're like researching these things or when you fall down the rabbit hole of these things, her name comes up a lot. You know, being the original in Rent, and then also being in the movie, something that I could actually go to the video store and rent and actually watch myself her performance, and then like only hear stories. And at the time, a very, very janky YouTube with very, very awful quality clips is what we had.
Yeah.
And the cast album, things like that. So in my head, together, so the Adina bond, but probably Rent. Rent has always been a very, very important show that not only do I love, but also would love to do again. I did it once. I would love to do it again somehow. But yeah, I think definitely Rent.
Nice. Who are you in Rent?
I was Gordon. He is part of the ensemble, and he's the one that has the "I find some what you teach suspect" little line.
Nice, nice. And I feel like since we're kind of talking about Wicked, I know Rent was the one that you ended up inching out in this answer, but with it incoming, how are you feeling about the Wicked film adaptation? What are your thoughts?
I have a lot. I have a lot of opinions, and it's so funny because I know so many people. Because if they see this, they're going to be like, "You can keep your mouth shut." And it's like, well, here's the thing. I've always been really worried. Okay, here's the thing. I love the show. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, the people should only see the show or it should be a taped version of the show. No, I love the idea of a big budget Hollywood Wicked movie. Um, Obviously, that they've been saying that we've been getting for the last 10 years since I was in high school, long time ago. But here's the thing. I was on board for every single announcement when they first announced that it was directed by John Chu. I thought, beautiful, amazing, incredible. And they announced the cast. I was like, great, cool, awesome. The thing that really, really knocked me off the bandwagon, I'm really having trouble getting back on board with, is the fact that it's two movies.
Yes. I
Only because I can't, like, I know people are like, well, we don't want to cut anything. I'm like, well, they already don't cut anything in the show, and the show's 2.5 hours, 15-minute intermission.
I mean, a 15-minute intermission, a year intermission, potato.
Yeah. And like, I get it. Like, I've heard every single argument from my friends being like, well, now they can have stuff that they won't cut anything with the new stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but maybe there should have been some cuts from the show for the, and that's coming from me. Like, I adore the show. I love the show so much, but I also can recognize when a cut or two could be made here or there.
For sure. Like, it is truly possible to have too much of a good thing. And yeah, no, out of all the choices I've heard for Wicked, that feels like just the strangest. Because I like, in my mind, I'm just like, okay, so we're gonna have Defying Gravity be the ending of the first one, and then that's it. And then like the other movie's just gonna be the rest of everything else.
It's I try not to. I really hope that they prove me wrong, because I'd be very, very, very happy to be proven wrong and we just have two really, really good Wicked movies. But I'm trying to, and it seems like they, in interviews and just like the way what they've released, they haven't really justified to me why it's two movies, other than if we had just gotten a really good, solid one movie, them trying to justify a sequel or a prequel. I guess this is the better option,
Yeah.
to just get it done all right away and, have the one contained story. But we'll see. I'm nervous about it. I really, really am nervous about it. They have great people behind it. They have a beautiful trailer. we'll see. We'll see.
Exactly, yeah. And it's better to come in from this perspective of like cautiously optimistic rather than being super, super excited and then it not meeting the expectation you build up in your head based on just like years and years of having the show be a fixture in just like pop culture, theater. Like so, but yeah, no, I'll be the first to put on the clown makeup if both of them are amazingly good, and me stirring the pot instantly by being like, "How do you feel about Wicked?" blows up in our faces.
Yes, yes. I'll be very, very happy if they're both good. I will shut up. I'll take everything back. But that's also 2 years ish from now, so we'll see.
Yeah, we got time. Um, but shifting over into your career right now and less about I know we talked earlier about like we're gonna get these hot takes out of you, but shifting over to your career right now, um, how did you find yourself in working in front of house? How did that come about and you found your way down the career path?
Well, it was a little bit of time after I had graduated. I took, I had a very rare opportunity to just take a year to like audition. I worked a few gigs here and there trying to do, but I basically was just like audition, audition, audition for that first year. And I did a couple fun things and little stuff. But then it got around to the time where I was like, I really should have like something like a survival job, something a little more solid. And my roommate at the time had actually sent me a playbill articles being like, oh, we're looking for front of house people, ushers, Disney's Aladdin. And I was like, oh, Disney nerd. Oh, musical theater person, right up my alley. So apply. And it was a really neat little process. I'm pretty sure anyone who's gone through the Disney-ish career vetting can tell you that it's a very streamlined, very thorough process. I almost at one point, because once you go through these couple of interviews, they send you up with what the main team is going to be like. Um, and when they send you up, because it was at the theater, the Lion King is that they have a table at the end, and you walk down this windowed, carpeted area. I felt like I was like doing like the walk, like when you get a call back for American Idol, and you have to like walk down to the judges table, and you just like it's like either you have to choose to make eye contact and stick with it or not until you get right there. So a lot of things are going through your head, and you're like, oh, it's like half audition, half job interview. Okay, so you get down there, but no, it was a very, very wind. I felt like once I got like hired and got part of the job, that I was almost swept off my feet a little bit, because you go through the things of being part of Disney and like the big return of a new show, especially an old property like Aladdin, and then you go through the emotions of Tony season and everyone and you like all the creatives and people coming to see the show and Tony voters and the excitement. And yeah, those first like year and a half and things like that are really, really what really keep you in the business when it
Nice.
can drag you down a little bit.
Yeah, and I wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about Tony season, because we hear so much about it from like the actor's perspective of like getting in that headspace. But what's it like for you, boots on the ground, interacting with people? How's Tony season like before and after for a front of house?
Well, it was a really neat Tony season that year. And in fact, separately from working being a show that was part of that Tony season, I believe that was the 14. It was either 13 to 14 season, the 14 to 15 season. Either way, we were Aladdin was one of the musicals nominated for Best Musical. I think that was my favorite year of the Tonys to date. Just what was there, what shows actually got left off. And also that was my favorite category, Best Actress in a Musical that year, which we can talk about later. But there will never be a lineup like that year until this next year that's coming up. So how perfect. But it was a really cool, because Aladdin was a weird mix, because we got a lot of people. I would say you would expect a lot of kids to come, maybe a lot of kids come now. But our first year and a half, it was all people that were like 90s babies. It was like a date night show. It was actually a very big industry show, because we had a lot of big production numbers and we had a lot of beautiful costumes. So we got quite the spectrum of people that, especially leading up to that Tony season, of just industry people that just loved to make you know that who they were, not in a toxic way, but like that, like that they were here to see the show and how excited they were for the show. And then of course with that, the New Amsterdam Theater is one of the most beautiful theaters, so of course they're excited to be there. New potential best musical, looking up at all the beautiful things, you know, all the people trying not to get hit from the mezzanine of people dropping things over. So it was a very, very warm experience, I would say. You feel, even when you're front of house and you feel like, oh, it's two separate worlds, you know, like there's the show, there's the actors, and then there's a front of house. It could be two separate worlds. But times like that were when the lines could be blurred a little bit. And it was very neat to be part of that opening night all the way through Tony process. Was that they did make us feel very, very included in that.
Absolutely. And like full transparency, I don't work in theater, but my girlfriend does. And so I've gone to a bunch of her shows, and I'll hear about the people that go to her shows off Broadway. And it's a similar situation of just like, wait, that person's here. What it does like feel like, even if you're not directly someone who's going to be acting, you feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, which is so exciting and mind blowing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's true. And it's so funny because when you take a step back of it, like I remember I used to like check the hashtags and stuff at Aladdin because I also was in a couple of their promo videos, which I would get recognized from sometimes. Even once at Little Shop, someone was like, "Oh, did you used to work at Aladdin?" And I was like,
Still?
yeah, yeah. I was like, yes, I did. And they're like, oh yeah, you were. And I was like, uh-huh, yeah. So that was always weird. But the the idea of like, oh, I every playbill that's ever existed for the first 6 years of that show, I probably had some hand in touching or making, or that wow, like you saw the gambit of celebrities roll through this building. Like you were there the day that like Beyonce came to see the show. Like it's little things like that. It's like wow, yeah, you're contributing to the community, even if it's just a small way that you're there for these little in between moments.
Absolutely. And so having all these pinch me moments at Aladdin, talk to me about the shift of going from Aladdin to Little Shop. What's that like for you? From so getting out of the Disney machine into shifting to like like another revival. What was your thought process there?
Well, I always thought it was really funny that I ended up at Little Shop because it was always a show that was very, very important to me. It was actually the first show that my school did. I believe it was the first musical my high school ever did. And of course, I made them do it because if we were senior, sorry everybody, I was quite the bridezilla during that. But we did it. So I did the show. And then, of course, I've always loved Alan Menken and I've always loved Disney. So then working for a Disney Aladdin and Menken show and then ending up at another Menken show that I had a lot of history with was kind of like, aha, you got me. Life has a funny way of coming full circle, stuff like that. But I think it was also a very interesting time in my life coming out of pandemic because I felt like in pandemic, I had a lot of time to think like a lot of people did. And I decided that the state that I was experiencing at my job at the time, or at least the time that pandemic happened, was something that I didn't want to go back into. So I didn't exactly leave the show on the best terms, at least from my side. I don't know if they knew it all. I really loved working for the show. The problem is that the management and a lot of stuff that they let fly and a lot of things that were happening there just I didn't want to be a part of anymore. And as much time as I put into that job and how like synonymous I was with the job, I knew I couldn't be there forever, especially if it was going to be something that if I was going to put in all this time and all this effort, and they weren't going to give me any opportunity for advancement. Which is then so funny because then I ended up at Little Shop out of pandemic as the assistant house manager, actually. And then about a month later, I think month, 4 or 5 weeks, something like that, I was promoted to the house manager. So quite the difference.
I mean, yeah, that is like one big leap to have. Just say like, oh yeah, I'm here. We'll see where it goes, and then instantly just saying like, having your work be rewarded that quickly has to be exciting. Um, you said that you did Little Shop before. I know we have understudies and standbys for a reason, but knock on wood, do you think if someone was like, it's time for you to go back up, do you think you could do it? You think you
Well,
got it in you?
it's so funny because we actually had a situation like this come up not too long ago. We actually almost had to cancel a performance when we just had Jinx Monsoon and Corbin Blue in, but they ended up doing like a little mini concert and they were able to do a few songs from the show. We had no Seymour though, so I was joking that if one actually I have a little assistant, his name is Andrew. It was very sweet, but he's like 5, 6 years younger than me, because I feel so old all the time. I was like, if you weren't on vacation, sis, I was like, now would be your time to shine. I would like you would have been up there. I was like, this one ready, just because I feel like yes, at this point I do know all the words and probably most of the staging from being there so much. But maybe that time for me has sunset a little bit. I feel like I'm more moving into my Mushnik days than my Seymour days.
We love a self-aware king. Um, um, but shifting over and talking a little bit more about Little Shop, there are shows where there's like stunt, like you hear about stunt casting, but then you hear something about like Little Shop where I like it's not that. It feels like it's a revolving door of absolutely amazing talent coming in the door and like taking their mark and putting their own spin and twist on it. Hearing Jinx Monsoon do I've never seen the show yet, but like hearing about Jinx Monsoon doing the show, Corbin Blue. I remember there was one time actually like I think a week or two ago, I was walking like downtown and like Corbin Blue was just jumping rope right in front of
Yep.
right in front of the Little Shop, and I'm like, wait, what? But you how does it feel to have to be like kind of have a front row seat, for lack of a better term, to this like revolving door of just constant talent?
Well, I thought I used to think that like the fact that as a living in Manhattan private citizen going to see all the theater things over the years, I thought that part of my life was super, super lucky. And I was like, wow, the things that I've got to see just through that lens. But then, especially more or less recently, I've started to realize, wow, like you really do have those. You have to pinch myself sometimes because it's like you get are very lucky to the things that I've got to see, the people I've got to meet, the different angles of people, the people that I thought I had an opinion on just as like a Broadway fan or just like being a theater person, and then you get to meet the real people and you get to see the actual side of them, and you learn a lot. Just you learn a lot about yourself in the in these situations, about the product you deliver on the job and like the person you are. You learn about the people that you work with, which is like you said, these incredibly talented, amazing people that I in some cases grew up like I bought the High School Musical soundtrack. I made my dad take me to the third one in theaters, just like I'm sure a lot of people did. um so yeah, the it is it's never lost on me how lucky I am to be there for those big moments and these big special castings. And honestly, when I get around to writing, I talk about it at length nonstop. But when I do get around to writing my book, there's going to be big sections in there about like I will write about seeing Corbin Blue and Jinx Monsoon together. Like I'm sure people talk about like Julie Andrews seeing the original My Fair Lady. Like to me, it feels like that level of this is history being made here, and how special is that we in this tiny 270 seat theater get to experience that.
Yeah, and that's the thing about like Broadway and theater in general. Like these huge monumental moments are happening in these small rooms, and it is capturing a moment in time and spreading that magic and doing it over and over and over and spreading that message that way. It's amazing. And so it is awesome to be able to like to kind of have yourself have like a front row seat to it. Is there anyone that you've like that you met or anyone that's come through? So I'm assuming everyone's amazing, but is there someone that was a big pinch me moment that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they are here?
We've well, I've definitely waiting for like one of my big like celebrity people, like one of my pop girlies, or like someone just like absolutely like jaw dropping to just come like a Dina to come walk in and see the show. I mean, just because we had a bunch of that at Aladdin, but I was usually pretty far. Like I'll never forgive them. This will be one negative in my book, is that I will never forgive them the time that Mariah Carey came to Aladdin. They put me in the mezzanine and not the orchestra. So yeah, that will be number one, first of all. Um, so I'm waiting for someone of that, like where I've always like that level of celebrity caliber to come. But we've had quite a few of them. But I think the one that I was most surprised that they were there and it was going as well as it was when Kim Kardashian was there this most recent time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mostly because I wasn't expecting someone of her caliber to show up. You know, I thought it might have been a matinee day at our little show. But just like the precision of her team and the ease to, not only was like the most nerve-wracking celebrity I've had at the show, but it was also probably the smoothest and most pleasant experience so far. So that was a big one. But we'll see. I feel like with the caliber of people we're getting, we might just get that super mega giant celebrity that I might not be able to uh, behave as professionally as I usually do.
So we gotta start a hashtag to bring. We gotta start a hashtag bring Mariah to Little Shop.
My God, Mariah at Little Shop.
I can. I got no social media clout, but we're gonna try.
We'll see. You know, we go to the show's Instagram is surprisingly popping with how popular it is, but we'll see. I think if they had any opportunity about that, they I would love to help out with that. So we'll see.
Nice.
And Mariah at Little Shop.
Yeah, we can workshop that hashtag. We got this. Well, my job is social media, so I'm like, we can come up with some content.
Yeah, but yeah, that we'll see that, or like if I'm also a big Swiftie, which is not the safest thing to be nowadays, but that's fine. I'm not afraid. They can come get me.
Very clearly, from the podcast is a audio medium, but for this will probably be a clip on social. But behind you, you have a variety of collection of lovely posters from shows, a few from Idina Menzel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience. Where did that spark come from, collecting posters and also getting them signed? Like, where did that come in for you?
I think I always blame my mom for all my collecting urges and fetishes, mostly because she, from a very young age, has always loved magnets everywhere. People go to a trip, she goes somewhere, got to commemorate, grab a magnet, they're everywhere. Love it. She also was very encouraging, like back in the day when it was like McDonald's had like the 8 pieces of the Pokemon toy and you have to collect them all. And of course I needed to collect them all. And I usually did so, but I've always before Broadway, especially Broadway specifically autographs, or my thing was I was a big autograph collector. Back in my little tiny hometown in Colorado, I did a lot of fan mail. So I would send a lot of fan mail, and depending, I would sometimes get a response, sometimes get the occasional headshot. So that was always my thing, is that I was sending out fan mail and stuff. And then when I moved to New York, I discovered amongst my peers who had been singing theater for years, and were teaching me everything. And so they taught me things about like the stage door, and me going to my first couple shows. I always loved the posters. I've always loved just like papers and mediums, because clearly I have a million things of other things. I'll have to send you a picture of my Taylor Swift wall eventually.
I'm ready.
But I always loved the concept of that. Every show usually had a poster. They were full color, because sometimes the playbills were in black and white, which I did not always agree with, but the posters were always in full color. They were always $20, and it was something to get signed. And I was bitten by the bug bad. Really bad. In fact, I think it was my roommate in conservatory that had a Succeed poster with Daniel Radcliffe when we went to go see it.
Oh wow!
And he was and he had it, and he was like super proud of it and displayed it. And I was like, huh, he might be onto something there. So I remember after one show, I think I bought one, and it was just downhill from there. But yeah, it turns into it's so funny because people come over and they see them all everywhere. And I just recently moved into this place this year. My old place, it was a lot worse because I had years and years of putting stuff up on the wall and collecting frames and stuff. Here, it's still there's a lot, but not as crazy as it could be. But I always think it's really funny because people like this, and they're always looking around and looking and asking questions like, "Well, you should see what I not have up. Like
Yeah.
these are just the frames that I can afford right now." So
At a certain point, you like someone walks in, you're like, "Welcome to the guided tour. Here's your pamphlet." And
well, it was so funny because I had a roommate one time that his friend was like really interested in theater, and so one night I caught him in the hallway. Something we were chatting about something because I had a bunch in the hallway, and he's like, "This is amazing." I was like, "You ain't seen nothing yet." So I brought him into my room, and I pulled out this big like Tupperware bin that I had been storing them in at the time, and I was like, "This is all of them." And he just sat there on the floor, like 1 a.m., just flipping through them, being like wow, yeah. And I was like, yeah,
you're
yeah.
more generous with your time than me because if at 1 a.m. I'd be like, "I have a bunch. I'll show it to you tomorrow. I'll send the photo. Don't worry about it. I got them."
Well,
But
and also it comes from me being very, very proud of my collection, but also like a horrible, horrible case of insomnia most of the time. So I
fair.
was very, very happy to chat.
Absolutely. So in terms of like stage dooring and going to get poster signed, what's your perspective with that when like like being part of staff on shows and being front of house staff, like how does that influence how you go to stage door, how you interact at stage door? Because you're in the industry, but
Mhm.
what does that look like for you?
Well, for me, especially now, because I don't get to do it super often, with me being at work most of the time, I still do it sometimes. And especially, I think what was the last one I was just at? I think I was just at Illinois on
Oh,
Monday,
nice.
which is nice that some shows will have Monday shows that I can get to like that. But my rule of thumb has always been a try not to be weird because there can be a lot of that. And I don't judge anybody else, like what they do, what the stage door is like for their reasons. Sometimes they're there to just talk. Sometimes, like that's their own deal. I try to be tolerant and respectful of whatever people's deal is. But for me, my rule of thumb is like always try not to be weird, not to encroach, be polite, be patient, not be rude. Just be attentive. Just behave the way that you would want to be greeted if you were on the other side of the barricade. Um, I try not to get too mixed up into the stage door politics, which is very, very controversial message boards here now and then nowadays. I think that there's perfectly nothing wrong with it as long as you're being respectful. Because for me, like if I was waiting for somebody, because I would have to go back multiple times for a certain show or a certain thing or a certain person. Obviously, I went back multiple times for her. Most of the time, I did see the show though. Um, most of the time.
Most.
Uh, but I was very polite every single time. But like so a lot of the time she didn't come out and people would like flip out and I'm be like, yes, I get it. Like you might only be here tonight because you have to fly back to Ohio tomorrow. I was like, but like this is extra. This isn't part of the ticket price. This is something else. And I could never get upset for something like that because I always can come back. I live here. I've always accepted that like if it's something I want, I'm gonna have to work for it and like probably come back and wait another hour or two, whatever. But like some of these people, man, especially some of the people that I've had to deal with at work,
Oh,
just some of the entitlement is
oh,
really interesting. Yeah. Especially when a lot of the people will go above and beyond to like give it somebody, even if it's not the full stage door experience, they'll like do a little something, maybe pre-sign a few things, and people just still aren't happy with stuff like that. And it's really disappointing, and that's why I have to kind of keep my mouth shut and be like, "Well, this was me. I'm very happy," but it is what it is. But yeah, you do get to see, but also there's a lot of good. I get to see a lot of when if I have to help out down there sometimes, or I've had to go down there with some. We've had a little extra higher security for some pairs than others. I like to keep eyes down there. But we do have really, really good crowds and really good audiences most of the time at Little Shop. And I think pretty much everyone that was waiting for Jinx and Corbin really, really got the best of them too recently. Um, so keep it up. I would say that if you're going to do it, just make sure you're there uh, respectfully and with your expectations tempered. And always also bring a pen, because if you want an autograph, you better have a pen, because they're not always going to have a pen, and that's not their fault. That's your fault.
That's true. They did the
That's
show. They're on their way out.
that's my number one tip for anyone. Stage door New York. If you want an autograph, you have to have the pen.
And honestly, I'm glad, because one of my next questions is literally going to be like, what are pieces of advice to give to someone who wants to stage door more?
That number one, yes, have the pen. Um, Piggybacking off of that, which is very specific, if you have these metallic ones, make sure you test them, because mine 99.9% of the time they're awful.
Oh,
So get a blank piece of paper, the back of a playbill. You test those ones. They're beautiful when they work, but make sure they work. The silver ones almost never work. I would recommend a gold or bronze. Those ones usually hold up really good. Um, I wouldn't bring more than one. It depends on the person. I have been very ballsy and asked people like up to 4 to 5 things, depending what it is and how many things I've had for a person. Yes, yeah, but also includes like the thing from the show that I saw that day. I always will lead with the thing that I bought or saw from the show that day, and then like for example, for Adina, I always would have something. If then I would see the plate of the show, one of the show posters, and then I would have like something Wicked or something Frozen, something else, something to show that yes, I respect the show that you did today, to show the word new material that you're working on, but also I have this other thing that you are also very famous for, and they're usually more than happy to do it for you.
nice. And like, and kind of going back to stage door, I used to be a massive. I'm not used to be. I am a massive emo kid, but I was used to be a massive Pink at the Disco fan. And so the one story that sticks out to me was when Brendan Urie was doing Kinky Boots, and
Hmm.
hearing all the pain. Like, just there's a lot of controversy and drama around that stage door, because it was Panic at the Disco fans showing up a good chunk of times, them not going to the show. Yeah, we don't need to like open up discourse, but like I remember, like I feel like that was my first time hearing about situations where stage doors can be not great depending on just the vibes around and the energy. And so like so, which is why it's so important, like you said, to have like to be courteous, to be gracious, to understand like they just did a show, like walking in with that energy and not like, and kind of like getting out of yourself and being like, how would this person feel, of like where, like if they just did a show, if maybe they had a good day, maybe they had a bad day, you don't know what you're getting.
Right. I've always found in my experience that even with if there was a lot of people waiting or the crowds were very big, that if they were calm, very respectful crowds, they're more likely to spend more time out there and go down the line and do both sides, things like that. I've also been over the years that I've seen a lot of shows implement rules that you will need a playbill or a ticket from that day to get to like a certain side of the barricade, and then the other side they have for people who wanted to wait, the autographers and people like that. I never minded rules like that, mostly because I would go see the show most of the time
Yeah,
and then wait around. Um, but it also depends on the person who's coming out, like what their commitment level is to it. People like Neil Patrick Harris and Daniel Radcliffe would have like the see the show rule, because they knew that they were going to go out there and probably spend a lot of time, and be respectful, because they know that they're going to attract both audiences, people who want to see them after the show from buying a ticket to the show, and then also just their general audience that might wait for them. So I think it really depends on the person, because if a person really doesn't want to spend that much time out there, they're just going to be like, well, whoever's out there, I get to out there, I'm going to go. And sometimes that's how it is. And that's what we as audience members and stage doors just always have to remember, be like, sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't.
sure.
And that's it.
So I have one last question about posters, stage stores, and this one might hurt, but I
Oh
feel like it's an
God.
important
Okay.
one. Whenever there's some sort of like, if you're a concert fan or if you've gone to theater, production, there's always a thing of like, there's that one show that you just missed and you regret it. What's the one show that, like, in the back of your head that you're just like, I wish I got something from that, or I wish, like, how did I miss that?
So I have to make peace with a few shows anyway, because most of the time, every show will get one, but sometimes some of them will not get them, and I will hold that as a grudge against that show forever. Not really, but like always be in the back of my head. I'm like, oh yeah, they didn't make a poster for that show. Um, but I don't think that I've ever had like a super regret, at least at a Broadway show, because most of the time I'll be like, even if I don't want it, I'll buy it that way. So if I would rather spend the money and have it and then regret it later. But I do have one big regret, and it actually is related to this, is that at Adina Menzel, she did, while she was doing If Then, she did a one night only at Radio City Music Hall. And
Oh,
I did the fan pre-sale. I sat in the orchestra. I had an incredible seat. I remember me and my roommate, we walked in and we saw the merch, everything, and I was like, "Oh, do they have a?" And they had like a poster, but it was like a traditional like world poster, something that I wasn't super into at the time, and it wasn't the window card size. So I was like, "Oh, it's not really a poster."
yeah.
And I had to see If Then still, and I was like, "So I've got to buy those too." So I was like, "Ah." And so like I was like, whatever. So we went and sat down, we saw the show, and then at the end I was like, maybe actually I will go buy that on the way out. And of course they were sold out. So to this day, ever so often, if I'm like up at 3 a.m. and it'll cross my mind, I'll be on eBay and I'll be searching keywords, Adina Menzel, Radio City poster. I know they exist. I've seen them, that people have them, but that one will always be my Moby Dick, my white whale.
So we're gonna put in a misconnection ad on top of this podcast to be like, hey, anyone has this poster? And again, like I said, maybe it might be the thing that finally puts you in front of something.
We'll see. We'll see. That would be a very, very nice one to check off my list, but also then I'm gonna have to find more room for it. So we'll see.
It's better always find more room than to
That's
not have it.
true. I'd rather have it and then not put it up and then not have it.
This is true. So, and I mean, I was thinking of a question before we get into the lightning round question. I'm like, you have such a wide collection. Would you ever like give it to a museum, like showcase for like a limited, like there's like the theater museum? Like, would you ever do some sort of thing like that to like liminally like loan it out for a little bit, or how do you feel about your collection and like keeping it and maintaining it?
I mean, I feel like I don't know if I would ever sell off any permanently. I feel like I have too many stories and too many memories attached to like every single one. As awful as that sounds, that I feel like I probably could pull one out and probably tell a story about. That's either the show or something that happened to me at the show or something involving the show. So it's almost like little like time capsules of like my theatrical career of just seeing shows. Um, I do get compared to, it's so funny because our mutual friend Emily,
Yeah,
there's always me. There used to be these walls of posters at the Marriott Marquis. I don't think
yeah.
they're up anymore. There used to be right by the bathrooms. There used to be, and so when people would come over, I'd always get that comparison. And I would always wonder, be like, yeah, I guess I would do something like this publicly. I would be scared that they'd get stolen. So I'd be like, well, I would have to own the property. So like if
Yeah.
I ever own the Marriott Marquis, maybe I would display my collection there. I guess it also would depend. I don't think that a lot of people would be interested in my collection as a whole because it's probably pretty modern. But some of my more like fancy classic pieces, things that I worked really hard for, more than my more rare stuff, people I feel like might be interested in on like a piece by piece basis. Maybe it would depend. It would have to depend where and like what. Like if there was like an Andrew Lloyd Webber celebration and they wanted some like rare pieces, I would consider it. But probably definitely not anything permanent. Like I tell people all the time, I was like, check the will, check the estate. Someone's probably getting something. These ones are being in my casket, so don't let my mom try to hide stuff from you.
Okay, wait. Which one's going in the casket?
Two of them are going in my caskets. First of all, is this one, which I don't know if you can see very well. It's all over my Instagram. This one is actually one of the ones that I work most hard on. It's my every Elphaba / OBC Wicked window card.
Ooh.
So it's got almost every single Broadway Elphaba, few famous tour ones, a bunch of Glindas. OBC, it's got Adina, Kristen, Joel, Stephen Schwartz on it. Shady, I almost had Winnie Holtzman, book writer, but she actually told me no at Wicked 20 this year. She was taking pictures and signing things for everybody, but she told me no. So, but whatever, it's fine. It's fine. Room for more other people in there. And then the other one would be my Evita window card, which is one of the rare 1970s ones, but mirror foil. And I actually have Mandy Patinkin, Patti LuPone, Hal Prince before he died, and Andrew Lloyd Webber on that one. So those two will be going with me to the afterlife, forever and always.
I feel like those are two really solid ones to like ride off into the sunset with. So we are wrapping up our journey, and I have a few lightning round questions. I call them lightning round. You can answer them as long as short as you want, but just kind of the last few questions that are not related to anything we've talked about for the last 45 minutes. Okay. The first one is this is a theater, very New York. I'm wearing a New Yorker's hat. Very New York podcast. What's your bodega order?
My bodega order is usually two liters of Diet Pepsi, a Snickers bar, and a medium bag of crunchy Cheetos. And that order probably usually happens on the way home from work, probably at least twice a week.
Nice standard one. Nice classic. I'm trying to remember other ones. Like, because mine's is not too bad. It's a Sausalito turkey, egg and cheese. No, egg and cheese. No, Sausalito turkey and Swiss on like a hero. Everything on it. Doritos, Coke Zero. I'm set. So this one's random. Would you rather fight one dino-sized chicken or 10 chicken-sized dinosaurs?
I think probably 10 chicken-sized dinosaurs.
Okay, I mean, yeah, because you feel it's like I was worried about the claws and the teeth, but I feel like you can outmaneuver that pretty.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's when like props come in, and, like an electric appliance. Like if it's just one big one, that's a little more trouble. But like the little ones are a little more doable, I think.
Absolutely. And so with this, the last one to round out this journey is for the whole season. A cool thing I want to do to kind of connect everyone who's doing the show is to make a little mixtape, which is just a Spotify playlist of all the song choices from guests, including and myself. But what do you want to add to the mixtape? What's your mixtape song? It could be anything you want as long as it's on Spotify.
Well, it better be on Spotify, but I would probably pick "Seasons of Love" from the original Broadway cast of Rent. That was the song that I auditioned my musical school with. It's a song from one of my favorite shows, and I think it is a very powerful anthem for the Broadway community in general.
I feel like that is such a very strong choice, and it really does encapsulate everything we've talked about today, and it feels just like the perfect choice. And with that, I will have to say, Josh, thank you so much for being on the podcast, coming on. I know this is one hell of a way to meet through mutual friends, to be like, hey, talk to me for 45 minutes or talk to me for an hour about like your job, like your posters. But I appreciate it so much.
Well, I really appreciated being on, and it was nice to go down the career lane a little bit.
And that's it for my conversation with Josh Garcia. Thank you so much again to Josh for sitting down, taking the time and talking to me. It was such a treat. I feel bad that all of you in podcast land can see the massive wall of posters, but I feel like we'll figure something out, or you can use your stretch of imagination to think about it. We didn't have a plug for that one, so I feel like the biggest plug we can say is go out and see a Broadway show, or realistically, see Little Shop of Horror. Like, it's amazing. I haven't seen it, but Alex has, She has nothing but nice things to say about it. It's such an amazing show from what I've heard. So yeah, go check it out. But if you like what you heard here and you want to stick around for a little while longer, please be sure to follow the podcast on whatever streaming platform you're using. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Click that follow and you'll get a fresh episode in your inbox, hopefully every Monday. We're making sure that we're going to keep to that mantra this time around. But also be sure to follow us on social media because it's also another way to keep up with the show. Any cool updates we have, that's where we'll do it. We're on Twitter at ATA_pod or at Against the Algorithm, all one word, on Instagram. And that's your way you can get fixed. Also, be sure to follow the Against the Algorithm mixtape. We've got a bunch of songs in there. We're already about halfway through the season and we've got 12 songs. It's a good variety. It's a good, awesome mix. So you might find something cool that you've never heard before. So give it a shot. You never know what you find. But with all of that being said, I'm going to catch you back here next week with another episode. But stay gold. Peace.